The Galactic Combat Training Hall was designed to accommodate over 300 species, each with their own unique physiology and combat methodology. The gravity could be adjusted by section, the atmosphere customized by zone, and the training equipment modified to suit everything from gelatinous blobarians to crystalline shardfolk. What the architects had not accounted for, however, was the volatile combination of aristocratic pride and Deathworlder reflexes. Cadet Alexis Kane was running late. The human had overslept after pulling an all-nighter studying quantum navigation theory, and she sprinted through the corridors with her training gear slung over one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and her brown eyes still carried the faint redness of sleep deprivation. She burst through the training hall doors just as Instructor Vokrim was beginning the day's lesson on close-quarters combat theory. Cadet Kane, the insectoid instructor, clicked disapprovingly, his mandibles creating the universal sound of annoyance. "How gracious of you to join us. Take your position in Section 7. We're discussing proper engagement distances for multi-limbed opponents." Alexis mumbled an apology and jogged toward her assigned section, where cadets were arranged in small groups for practical demonstrations. She didn't notice the way 4 particular cadets watched her approach with narrowed eyes and barely concealed hostility. The Valerian Dominion had ruled their sector of space for 6,000 years before humanity had even discovered fire. Their species, tall, elegant beings with chitinous exoskeletons that shimmered like polished bronze and 4 arms that moved with aristocratic grace, considered themselves the apex of civilization. They were warriors, poets, philosophers, and they had never been conquered. Then the humans arrived. Humanity's admission to the Galactic Council had been controversial. A species from a Class 12 death world, they had clawed their way from primitive tool users to spacefaring civilization in a cosmically brief time span. They excelled at combat simulations, exceeded expectations in endurance trials, and worst of all, they did it all with an infuriating casual attitude that the Valorians found deeply offensive. Cadet Thexal of the 7th Noble Clutch had been the top-ranked fighter in his cohort for 3 cycles. Then Alexis Kane arrived and casually broke his records in half the time. He had not taken it well. "The Deathworlder graces us with her presence," Thexal said loudly as Alexis approached. His 3 companions, all Valerian, all from noble bloodlines, spread out slightly, a movement so subtle most species wouldn't notice. But it was a classic predatory formation. Alexis recognized it immediately. Earth hadn't produced humanity as its only predator, after all. "Not looking for trouble, Thexal," she said evenly, setting down her gear. "Just here to train." "Train?" One of Thexal's companions, a female named Sivirex, clicked her mandibles in laughter. "You mean stumble in late and pretend your primitive instincts qualify as technique?" The other cadets in the section were backing away. Some species recognized the pre-fight tension in the air. Others simply knew that when Valerian nobles and Deathworlders occupied the same space, safety margins increased exponentially. Alexis took a slow breath, her heart rate deliberately calm. "I'm not doing this. Whatever point you're trying to make, it's not worth the disciplinary action." "Disciplinary action?" Thexal circled closer, his 4 arms flexing in the Valerian gesture of challenge. "There are no instructors watching this section right now. Equipment malfunctions. Training accidents happen. Perhaps the soft-worlder simply couldn't handle the standard gravity settings." The attack came from behind. A Valerian cadet named Jekthar lunged, all 4 arms extended to grab Alexis in what should have been an inescapable grapple. It was a textbook Valerian combat initiation, overwhelming force, multiple limb control, immediate dominance. It would have worked on almost any species in the galaxy. Alexis moved. Her body dropped and twisted with fluid economy, letting Jekthar's momentum carry him forward into empty space. One of her legs swept out in a precise arc that caught his leading leg at the joint. Valerian exoskeletons were remarkably strong against blunt force, but joints were joints, and leverage was leverage. The crack echoed through the training hall. Jekthar went down hard, screaming, his leg bent at an angle that nature had never intended. Elapsed time, 1.4 seconds. SpacePirates rushed from the left, her combat training excellent, her forearm strike pattern deadly against most opponents. But Alexis had trained against multiple limbed opponents since her first week at the academy. She'd sparred with Arachnid Collective members who had 8 limbs and Octavian traders with 10. 4 was practically simple. Alexis caught one of SpacePirates' striking arms, used it as a pivot point, and delivered a palm strike to the Valorian's thorax joint, not the armor chest, but the softer articulation point where the exoskeleton allowed for breathing flexibility. The impact drove every molecule of air from SpacePirates' respiratory system. The Valorian collapsed, gasping, her bioluminescent markings flickering in distress. Elapsed time, 4.2 seconds. The third attacker, Vorlen, had better survival instincts. He hesitated for half a second, watching his companions fall. That hesitation was fatal to his assault. Alexis closed the distance before he could reset his stance, drove her shoulder into his center mass, and executed a throw that sent him crashing into the training equipment rack. Protective padding prevented serious injury, but the impact left him dazed and groaning. Elapsed time, 7.8 seconds. Thexal, to his credit, actually landed a hit. His upper right arm caught Alexis across the shoulder as she turned to face him, a blow that would have shattered bones in most species. Alexis grunted with pain, felt something crack, not bone, thankfully, but definitely soft tissue damage, and responded with the kind of violence that had kept humanity alive on a planet that actively tried to kill them for 200,000 years. She went low, inside his guard, where his 4 arms became a liability in close quarters. A strike to his knee joint, not to break, but to destabilize. As he shifted weight, she pivoted and delivered an elbow to his mandible cluster with precisely calculated force. Enough to crack the chitin. Enough to send him to the infirmary. Not enough to kill. Thexal dropped like a puppet with cut strings, his bioluminescent markings flashing the Valorian equivalent of unconsciousness. Elapsed time, 11.9 seconds. Alexis stood among the fallen, her chest heaving, adrenaline singing through her veins. Her shoulder throbbed. Her knuckles were scraped. But she was standing, and they weren't. The training hall had gone absolutely silent. Instructor Vakrim appeared, his compound eyes wide with shock. Behind him, 3 other instructors and a medical team were already rushing forward. The insectoid's mandibles worked soundlessly for a moment before he found his voice. Cadet Kane. Explain. Now. Alexis's voice was steady despite her elevated heart rate. Self-defense, sir. I was attacked by 4 opponents without provocation. I neutralized the threats using minimum necessary force. Minimum? Vakrim looked at the 4 Valorians being loaded onto medical gurneys. You put 4 cadets in the infirmary in under 12 seconds. Yes, sir. The alternative was letting them put me in the morgue. I chose what seemed like the better option. A human instructor, Commander Patricia Walsh, one of the few humans in senior positions, pushed through the crowd. She surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen combat on 3 continents and 2 colony worlds. Then she looked at Alexis, and her expression was carefully neutral. Security footage, she asked Vakrim. Already pulled it, the insectoid confirmed. The Valorians initiated the attack. The human responded with considerable efficiency. Walsh nodded slowly. Cadet Kane will cooperate fully with the investigation. But for the record, this is what happens when you jump a Deathworlder who's been training for combat since she could walk. On Earth, we don't fight for sport or honor. We fight to survive. Evolution built that into every cell of our bodies. She turned to address the assembled cadets, her voice carrying across the silent hall. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Humans didn't conquer their world through superior strength or natural weapons. They did it through pattern recognition, adaptability, and the terrifying ability to turn anything, including their own bodies, into weapons. That's not a boast. That's a warning. Alexis was escorted to medical for evaluation, then to security for questioning. The investigation took 6 hours and concluded what the security footage already proved: justified self-defense against multiple armed attackers. The 4 Valerian cadets recovered within 2 weeks. Thexal's noble family demanded satisfaction, then withdrew their complaint when human diplomatic channels quietly reminded them that honor duels on human terms would not end well for anyone involved. The incident became legend within 48 hours. Within a week, every combat instructor in the academy had updated their training protocols to include a new warning label. Warning: do not engage human cadets in unauthorized combat scenarios. Species exhibits disproportionate threat response capabilities. Deathworld reflexes remain active regardless of peaceful intent. Alexis Kane became the first human to receive both a commendation for self-defense and a stern lecture about excessive efficiency. She accepted both with the same quiet dignity. After all, she'd only done what any human would do when cornered, whatever it took to walk away alive.